This panel is designed to have a discussion around three major themes. The first one is to look at the role of the international trade system. During the keynote speech and the messages of solidarity this morning, we heard how the role of labor at that time was the main source or main factor of production. We heard about how that was taken away from the continent illegally, forcefully, in a very violent way, to then move and go and be used in a very immoral, very low-level, poor quality, poor conditions way to develop other parts of the world, thereby undermining. So that trade system, how does it set up today when we put into context that sort of discussion? And with that sort of framing, I'd like to introduce Comrade Jane Nalunga from SEATINI, Uganda, to just tell us a little bit more about how we need to be thinking about the international trade system, Africa's indebtedness in this way. Comrade Jane, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you so much, Jason, and good afternoon, comrades.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, comrades. That's a little bit better. So I'm going to look at the role of international trade system and how it has perpetuated the debt crisis. But what I want also to talk about in that context is to look at it from a historical point of view, the historical economic injustices, and what, Jason, you have talked about, starting from slave trade, because that was also part of the international trade system. And we have seen the trading system changing all the time from slave trade. We saw it changing to colonialism, we saw neocolonialism, and we still see the international trade system like the World Trade Organization. We see a number of agreements and treaties. We have signed the free trade agreement, the bilateral investment treaties. So we have signed a number of treaties, and that makes up the international trading system. But I think what I need to point out is that the trading system is perpetuating the extractivist capitalist model of development. The capitalist extractivist model is that model which is centered around extraction of resources, extraction of people, like under the slave trade, extraction of now natural resources, like the minerals, extracting people. Even today, we see our young people crossing. So it's that kind of development model that, when we talk about colonialism, neocolonialism, slave trade, those are just the tools which that mode of development uses to be able to extract wealth from the global south to the global north. And Massa talked about the sub-imperialism, the compradors. The capitalist system has people also in Africa, in our governments. We used to call them the compradors who are working with the capitalist class to be able also to benefit from the extraction. So what we see is that even today, all the agreements which are signed, like I have said, the bilateral investment treaties, the free trade agreements, the financial policies, we have, for example, liberalized our capital account. All the resources are going out. All those policies are to sustain that extractivist capitalist model of development. And what we see, inequality in our countries, increased poverty. We see that our countries are at the bottom, the very bottom of the value chains. We export mainly raw materials, coffee, cocoa, tea, and industrialization isn't done in our countries. And our fear is that this is going to continue because of the green energy, the issue of critical minerals, and we continue sending out these minerals. But I think what's really important, I liked the presentation from our young parliamentarian, the young parliamentarian who said we'll have to fight, that we have to make sure that all the raw materials don't go out, that we industrialize, which is a good sentiment. But I think it's really important. I like the gender movement, feminist movement, who say, let us put on the feminist lenses. And I think in this case, we need to put on lenses, maybe we'll call them transformative lenses, because, my dear, we have already signed agreements, and we are still signing agreements where we say we are not going to restrict any export of raw materials, and we signed it in an agreement, So we need to be careful what we sign on to. And I liked also the presentation here, the presentation regarding my sister from South Africa about the dignity of the workers. So what it means, when we talk about reparative justice, we need to look at it from different angles, the economic angle, the labor angle, and we need to be able to see where we have to fight. In fact, when the young member of parliament was saying, I remembered Winston Churchill, when he was during the Second World War, when Germany invaded France and was almost invading the UK, England, he said, we are going to fight. We'll fight in the hills, we'll fight on the beaches, we'll fight everywhere. Use Google, and it's very, very passionate and interesting. So when we are going to fight the reparative justice, the injustices, we need to understand what we are fighting and what we want in return, what we want to say no to. I just want to give examples, for example, of the economic partnership agreements. These are trade agreements we are signing with the European Union. We have liberalized extensively. We have said no restrictions to raw materials, but we sit here and say we have to add value. We need to look at those contradictions. We have agreed European and US companies to build the Lobito corridor. And during colonial times, we had all these railway lines running from the interior to the coast to take out the minerals in Uganda. I'm from Uganda, from Mombasa to Kasese, deep in Uganda to get the copper. That railway didn't go anywhere, just there to the coast. But we are still doing the same. The Lobito corridor is being built even today, through Angola, Mozambique, DRC, to take out the minerals. So we need to be really careful what we want. If we say want to fight to ensure that we don't export raw materials, because we depend on raw materials, and the export of raw materials is the biggest challenge, is that historical injustice where we export raw materials and import finished products. And this has led to exploitation of our minerals. It has led to trade deficits. It has led to balance of payment challenges, and even this cycle of poverty, cycle of indebtedness. It's because the ends are not meeting. The ends are not meeting. Somebody was saying we need to provide for our education, to provide for health, because if we can't generate those resources internally, we have to borrow. So we need really to look at that. We need to put on those lenses if we are to structurally transform our economies, no? Structurally transform our economies, to industrialize, to create jobs, and decent jobs, by the way, so that our young people are not dying. Because things are almost the same. The other time, the slaves used to be captured, put on ships, but today we pay. People are selling their pieces of land to send the kids to Arab countries to work as slaves. We see our people dying across the Mediterranean. So things are almost the same. So if we are saying we want to transform our economies, to industrialize, we need to look at what kind of institutions do we need. Are our institutions up to the task, from the AU to the REX to the national level? Our policies okay? Are they okay? Are we signing the right agreements or not? So we need to be able to look at. And lastly, I think it's important to quantifying the harm that these injustices have done to us. It will be difficult, like the professor raised here. Quantifying it will be difficult, because how do you put numbers to deindustrialization, to loss of jobs, to people who can't even afford, to buy an aspirin? How do you put a price on that? But we need to quantify. We need to quantify the harm. Not because we want to put a price and say we are demanding so much money, but to be able to know that it's time that we fight back, so that we know that we need to structurally change our policies. I think I will stop there, Jason.
Great, yeah, thank you very much, Comrade Jane. And I think you've brought out something very important in your submission about how some of these practices, the forceful movement and displacement of human beings being done in a very undignified way, today continues to be perpetuated, but also through a legal way. I think Professor Beckles and Dr. Umiebiei talked about it during the keynote session, how certain even governments today are entering into bilateral agreements to move people from the continent to other places. The country where I come from, our government has entered into such agreements under the guise of dealing with the young unemployment issue in the country, and therefore people are being given preferential fast-track visas to move from Kenya into the Middle East. So I think we need to really think about that.